This is Profit with A. And tonight, I'm opening a very specific set of files. Files that prove that sometimes, the most valuable asset you have isn't a skill, or a website, or a product. It's the courage to have a conversation. The title of this compilation is 5 Conversations with Strangers That Made Me $100,000. Now, I know what that sounds like. It sounds like a headline. But what you're about to hear is not a theory. It's not a guess. These are 5 true, lived experiences from my own archives. 5 case files pulled directly from the Profit log. Each one a step-by-step walkthrough of a single, pivotal conversation, where it happened, what was said, the awkwardness, the hesitation, and the exact, practical steps that turned a few minutes of dialogue into significant financial wins. This is the anatomy of a conversation that pays. Before we open the first file, make sure you're subscribed to Profit with A and you've hit the notification bell. Because what we're about to uncover isn't just my story. It's a blueprint. A blueprint for turning your next casual chat into a calculated, profitable opportunity. And you will not want to miss the details we're diving into next. Let's open the first file. This is where the pattern began, though I didn't know it at the time. This conversation was born out of pure frustration. File Profit 401, the $200 coffee shop comment. It was the fall of 2018. I was sitting in the corner of a local coffee shop, the kind with mismatched armchairs and the constant, low hiss of the espresso machine. My laptop was propped up on a wobbly little table, and I was staring at a website I just built, a simple, 5-page site for a friend's small landscaping business. I'd spent weeks on it, learning as I went, and I was proud of it. But it was just sitting there. For one friend. I remember the screen felt too bright, and the smell of burnt coffee beans was starting to give me a headache. I was thinking, is this it? I learned all this just to build one single website. The man at the table next to me, probably in his late 50s, leaned over. He had been glancing at my screen for a few minutes. He said, "Sorry to bother you, but that looks a heck of a lot better than my website." I laughed, a little embarrassed. I said, "Thanks, I'm just learning." And then he asked the question that changed the trajectory of my entire week. He said, "How much would you charge to make one like that for me?" I froze. I had no idea what to say. I hadn't even considered that someone would pay me. My mind went completely blank. So I did the only thing I could think of. I said, I honestly don't know. Can I get your email? I'll put a quote together and send it to you tonight. For the next 4 hours, I was paralyzed by that question. What do I charge? I went home, the taste of that last, cold sip of coffee still in my mouth. I scoured online forums. I saw people offering sites for $50 and others for $5,000. The imposter syndrome was deafening. Who was I to charge anything? I was just a guy in a coffee shop. I must have opened a dozen pricing calculators, my mouse hovering over the Calculate button, too afraid to click. The sound of my own frustrated sigh was the loudest thing in my apartment. I almost didn't send the email. I drafted it, deleted it, and drafted it again. I rationalized it by saying to myself, just name a price. The worst he can say is no. You have nothing to lose because you have nothing right now. Finally, at 11:37 p.m., I hit send on an email that proposed $200 to build him a simple, 3-page website. My heart was pounding. I expected silence. Or a rejection. But less than 30 minutes later, my inbox pinged. That sound cut through the late-night silence like a knife. The email was 3 lines long. It read, "Sounds fair. Attached is what I need on the pages. Let me know how you want to get paid." I just stared at the screen. The $200 felt like $1 million. It wasn't the money. It was the validation. A stranger saw value in my shaky, beginner-level skills and was willing to pay for it. That was the turning point. The door had creaked open. I built his site. It took me 3 days, and I probably over-delivered out of sheer terror of doing a bad job. But when I sent him the link, he was thrilled. He paid me via PayPal, and I watched that $200 land in my account. The immediate reality was that I was $200 richer. But the bigger lesson was what he told me after. He said, "You know, you should tell people you do this. I know 3 other guys in my Rotary Club who need this." I hadn't just been paid for a website, I'd been paid for a conversation and handed a marketing strategy on a silver platter. File profit, 401 verdict, classified as a foundation pivot, the moment a hobbyist's mindset officially fractures, revealing the entrepreneur beneath. That first, awkward conversation unlocked a tiny, local network. But it also made me wonder. If a random chat in a coffee shop could do that, what kind of doors could a deliberate conversation in a dedicated online community open? That question led me directly to our next file. Six months after the coffee shop incident, I was no longer a complete beginner. I had a small portfolio, 3 whole websites. But the work was sporadic. I was spending my evenings scrolling through niche online forums for small business owners, not to find clients, but just to learn about their problems. The glow of my monitor was the only light in my room. I'd see posts about supply chain issues, hiring, and marketing. I was a ghost, just reading, absorbing. I felt like an imposter, lurking in a world I wasn't fully a part of. Then I saw a post from the owner of a small, independent hardware store. He was venting. His title was, "Is anyone else's website just a giant digital brochure that does nothing?" He talked about how he spent thousands on a beautiful site, but it didn't help him sell anything online. It just sat there. And something clicked. I knew how to fix that. I had just learned about basic SEO and sales funnel principles. For 20 minutes, I typed a response, then deleted it. My cursor blinked in the empty text box, taunting me. This wasn't a casual coffee chat, this was a public forum. Putting myself out there felt like standing on a stage. But I remembered the $200. So I took a breath and I posted. I didn't pitch him. I just offered a few free, actionable tips he could implement himself to make his site more than a brochure. The next day, I had a private message in my forum inbox. It was from him. He said, "Your advice was more helpful than the guy I paid. How did you know this stuff?" My initial excitement was immediately crushed by anxiety. This was the moment. I had to transition from helpful guy to professional for hire. And I had no script. I spent an hour crafting a reply, trying to sound confident but not pushy, expert but not arrogant. I told him I was a digital marketing consultant, the first time I'd ever used that title for myself. It felt like a lie. I offered to do a free, deep dive audit of his site to show him what was possible. That was the gamble, a few hours of my unpaid time. I sent him the audit. It was a 12-page PDF, filled with screenshots, data, and a step-by-step plan. It was the most professional thing I had ever created. The wait was agonizing. 2 days passed with no word. I was convinced I had wasted my time, that I had overreached. Then, the ping. A new email. The subject line was, "This is incredible." He hadn't just read it, he was blown away by it. He wrote, "I had no idea this was even possible. I want you to do all of it. What would you charge to make this happen?" This wasn't a $200 website. This was a strategy. This was a real project. I quoted him $5,000 for the entire project: SEO optimization, content creation, and setting up a simple e-commerce system. He agreed without hesitation. That number, $5,000, felt astronomical. It was more than I had made in the previous 6 months combined. The project took 2 months to complete, and it was a steep learning curve, but I delivered. The reality was that a single, thoughtful forum post, where I provided genuine value without asking for anything in return, had led to my first 5-figure project. The lesson was profound: your expertise has value, but you have to be willing to give a little of it away for free to prove it. File Profit 219 verdict, classified as a value-first validation, proof that leading with genuine problem-solving is a more powerful sales pitch than any advertisement. A coffee shop and an online forum taught me that opportunities were hiding in plain sight. But what happens when you stop waiting for the conversation to come to you, and you start engineering it? That aggressive shift in strategy is what we'll uncover in the next batch of files, after this short break. Welcome back to Profit with A. We've opened 2 files so far, one born from chance, the other from providing value. But what happens when you move from being reactive to being proactive? When you stop waiting for an opportunity to speak and start deliberately hunting for the right person to talk to. The next 2 files represent that strategic shift. File Profit 556, the cold DM that landed a retainer. It was early 2020. The world was locking down, and my freelance work, which relied on those chance encounters, had dried up overnight. I was sitting at my kitchen table, which had become my office, my gym, and my restaurant. The silence was oppressive. I had a few $1,000s in the bank, and the panic was a physical thing, a tightness in my chest. I knew I couldn't just wait for another forum post or a lucky coffee run. I had to go out and find the conversation myself. I felt like a hunter, but I had no map and no idea what I was hunting for. I started spending hours on LinkedIn, not just scrolling, but actively stalking. I looked for small to medium-sized businesses in my region that had decent products but terrible, outdated social media presence. I made a list. And then I saw her profile, the founder of a local, sustainable candle company. Her personal profile was vibrant and full of personality, but her company's page had 3 followers and a post from 6 months ago. This was the gap. The inciting incident wasn't a message sent, it was the decision to send one. I crafted a single, cold direct message. It took me all morning. It wasn't a pitch. It was a single, specific observation. I wrote, "I love your mission. Noticed your social presence might not be capturing the amazing story you tell here. I have one idea that could change that. Open to a quick chat." I hit send and entered a new kind of hell, the silence of the unread receipt. For 3 days, I checked my LinkedIn app compulsively. The sent icon just sat there. I felt like a spammer. The doubt was deafening. Who do you think you are? She's going to report you. Your message is stupid. I must have reread that message 100 times, each time finding a new flaw. This wasn't a public forum, this was a private, unsolicited intrusion. The learning curve was steep, learning to sit with the discomfort of rejection by silence, and realizing that a 2% response rate on 100 messages is still 2 conversations. On the 4th day, as I was about to give up and move on to the next name on my list, my phone lit up. A LinkedIn notification. My heart jumped into my throat. She had replied. Just one line, "Okay, I'm intrigued. What's the idea?" That was it. That was the crack in the door. I didn't pitch her in the reply. I simply asked for 15 minutes on a Zoom call to explain it properly. She agreed. On that call, I presented my one idea, a story behind the scent series for Instagram. I didn't ask for a job, I showed her a vision. At the end of the call, she was quiet for a moment, and then she said, "I've been needing this. I don't have time to do it. Can you just do it for me?" That single cold DM led to a $1,500 per month social media management retainer. It lasted for 9 months, netting me $13,500. The reality was a consistent, predictable income stream that saved me during a period of global uncertainty. The lesson was brutal but empowering. Rejection is the default setting, but a single, well-researched, value-forward message can bypass it entirely. You're not a spammer if you're offering a genuine solution to a visible problem. File Profit 556 verdict, classified as a proactive breakthrough, the understanding that a high-value conversation is often a target that requires deliberate aim, not a random event you stumble upon. The retainer was stable, it was safe. But it was also a ceiling. I was trading my time for money, again. The next file, however, came from a conversation that had nothing to do with selling my time, and everything to do with leveraging a forgotten asset. File Profit 812, the Uber ride about a digital ghost town. Introduction, set the scene. Summer of 2021. I was in the back of an Uber, heading to a meeting. My phone was buzzing with retainer work, and I felt busy, but not wealthy. Not free. The driver, a guy named Mark, was talkative. He was telling me about his side business, which had boomed during the pandemic, selling specialized, vintage car parts online. He was frustrated. "The weirdest thing," he said, "I've got this old website, a forum from like 2005. Nobody uses it anymore. But I get emails every single week from people trying to buy parts listed there. I just have to tell them it's dead." My ears perked up. This wasn't a problem I could solve with my usual services. This was different. He had a digital ghost town that was still getting traffic, a clear sign of unmet demand. I asked him one question that changed everything. "Mark, have you ever thought about just selling that website? The domain, the old content, all of it." He laughed. "Sell it? Who would buy a dead website?" I said, "I might know a few people. Can I look into it for you?" In that moment, I wasn't a freelancer, I was a scout. I saw an abandoned house on a valuable plot of land, and I knew there were people who made a living renovating just that. I spent the next week diving into the world of website brokerage, a world I knew nothing about. I learned about domain authority, traffic metrics, and niche website valuation. I felt completely out of my depth. The language was different. It was all monthly net profit multiples and backlink profiles. I had to install new plugins on my browser just to understand the data I was looking at. The struggle was the sheer volume of new information. I wasn't building anything, I was appraising. And I had to present a valuation to Mark, a stranger, that was both fair to him and attractive to a buyer. I almost backed out a dozen times, thinking, this isn't my world. I'm going to mess this up. After my research, I estimated his dead forum was worth at least $8,000 due to its aged domain, strong backlinks, and consistent, direct traffic. I presented the numbers to Mark over another Uber ride, this time as a planned meeting. His jaw literally dropped. He saw it as a liability, the market saw it as an asset. He authorized me to list it on a popular website brokerage marketplace. The listing went live on a Tuesday. By Friday, we had 3 serious offers. The winning offer came in at $8,500. For a website he wasn't even using. My fee was a 15% brokerage commission, $1,275. But the money was almost secondary. The reality was that I had made over $1,000 from a single casual conversation by connecting 2 dots that nobody else had connected. I didn't do the work, I facilitated the deal. The lesson was paradigm shifting. Profit isn't always about creating something new. Sometimes, it's about recognizing the latent value in something that already exists and brokering the conversation that unlocks it. It taught me to look for assets, not just tasks. File Profit, 812 verdict, classified as an asset mindset activation, the realization that the most profitable conversations often revolve around identifying and unlocking value that others overlook or misunderstand. A coffee shop, a forum, a cold DM, and an Uber ride. For different environments, one consistent thread, the courage to engage. But the final file I'll open tonight, this one was different. This was the conversation that almost didn't happen. It was the one that required me to be vulnerable, to admit what I didn't know, and in doing so, it unlocked the single biggest payout of them all. We've walked through 4 case files now. From a chance comment to a value-driven post, from a cold message to a conversation about hidden assets. Each one built on the last, increasing in strategy and scale. But this final file, this one was the ultimate test. It wasn't about proving my skill, or providing value, or even brokering a deal. It was about a conversation I never wanted to have. It was about admitting my own ignorance, and in that vulnerability, finding the key to the biggest win of all. File Profit, 009, the admission of ignorance that unlocked $80,000. It was the spring of 2022. I was on a high. The retainer money, the brokerage fee, I felt like I had cracked the code. I was confident, maybe even a little arrogant. I had landed a discovery call with the founder of a mid-sized SaaS company, a potential client who could dwarf all my previous earnings combined. I prepared for that call like a general for battle. I had my notes, my pricing tiers, my portfolio polished to a mirror shine. I was ready to sell him on my expertise. I was ready to be the smartest person in the room. The Zoom call started. He was polite, but reserved. I launched into my well-rehearsed pitch, talking about engagement metrics and content calendars. About 2 minutes in, he held up a hand. He said, "I appreciate that. But our problem isn't awareness. Our problem is that we have a world-class product that nobody understands how to use properly. Our churn rate is killing us." He then asked me a question that froze the blood in my veins. "What's your methodology for creating integrated, product-led educational content that reduces customer churn. I didn't understand half the words in that sentence. My script was useless. My mind went blank. The facade of the expert crumbled in an instant. And in that moment of sheer panic, I made a choice. I took a slow breath, looked directly into the camera, and said, "I'm going to be completely honest with you. I don't have a prepackaged methodology for that. But I understand the problem, and I am absolutely certain I can build you one. Can you walk me through exactly what killing you looks like in your data?" The next 48 hours were the most intellectually grueling of my life. That call had lasted another hour, and he had downloaded terabytes of context onto my brain. I had admitted I didn't know, and in return, he had entrusted me with his company's core problem. The pressure was immense. This wasn't just about losing a client, it was about betraying the trust one had earned through honesty. I lived in spreadsheets, analytics platforms, and case studies on customer education. I didn't sleep. The sound was the frantic scratching of my pen on a legal pad, mapping out a system from scratch. The struggle was internal, the constant, screaming voice that said, "You're in over your head. He's going to find out you're a fraud." But I had to quiet that voice. I had committed. I had to prove that my ability to learn and build was more valuable than any pre-existing knowledge. I didn't send a proposal. I sent a blueprint. A 25-page document titled, "The Integrated Education Framework." It outlined a complete system for weaving educational content directly into the user experience to combat churn. It was raw, it was unpolished, but it was 100% original, built specifically for his company. I sent it and prepared for radio silence, or worse, a polite, "Thanks but no thanks." The reply came an hour later. It was a Calendly link. The subject line was, "This is it. Let's talk numbers." On that follow-up call, there was no haggling. He simply said, "How much to make this a reality?" The number I quoted felt audacious. It was more money than I had ever asked for. He agreed without a second of hesitation. The project fee was $25,000. But the real win came 6 months later, after I had successfully implemented the framework. His company's churn rate dropped by 18%. Based on the performance clause we built into the contract, that result triggered a $55,000 performance bonus. Total takeaway, $80,000. From a single conversation. The reality was a financial transformation. But the lesson was a personal one. The highest level of authority isn't pretending to have all the answers. It's having the confidence to admit what you don't know, and the competence to go out and find the solution. Vulnerability, when paired with action, is not a weakness, it's the most powerful signal of trustworthiness you can ever send. File Profit 009 Verdict, classified as the cornerstone conversation, the ultimate proof that the most profitable dialogue is not a presentation of your genius, but a collaborative exploration of a problem, starting with 3 of the most powerful words in any language: "I don't know." Five conversations. $100,000. We started in a noisy coffee shop, with a question I didn't know how to answer. We moved to a silent online forum, where I offered value before asking for anything. We shifted to a proactive, cold DM born from panic, and then to an Uber ride where I saw an asset everyone else missed. And we ended in a Zoom call where my admission of ignorance built more trust than any boastful claim ever could. If you look for a common thread through all these files, it's not a specific skill. It's not a secret platform. It's a mindset. The Profit with a case files show the same, unshakable truth: making money isn't about luck or genius. It's about consistency. It's about the trial and error in the silent, late-night hours. It's a willingness to start small, to be awkward, to be wrong, and to see every single human interaction, whether online or off, as a potential door. The first notification, the first sale, the first yes, they may come slowly. But when they do, they start to sound less like a lucky break, and more like a rhythm. A rhythm you built by simply being willing to talk, to listen, and to act. So I'm telling you now, don't wait for perfect conditions. Don't wait until you have the perfect pitch, the perfect website, or the perfect answer. That day may never come. Start where you are. Start with what you have. Your first win, whether it's $5, $200, or just a "thank you, that was helpful," is not about the amount. It's the proof. Proof that the door is open. Your only job is to walk through it. Now, the conversation continues with you. If you've started your own hustle, if you've had a conversation that led to a win, no matter how small, I want to hear about it. Drop your story in the comments below. Document it. I read every single one, and your case file might be featured in a future Profit log. To make sure you don't miss it, subscribe to Profit with A and hit the notification bell. We're just getting started opening these files, and the next one could be the blueprint you've been waiting for. This has been a productive one from Profit with A. Until next time, keep hustling.